Hey friends, so today we're going to be taking a look at this organization that is known as Thorn, which has been lobbying the world, actually. I was going to say the EU, but it's not just the EU, the UK. It's everywhere. They develop technology to put surveillance on your devices. They want to have surveillance on every device in order to detect something to protect kids, as they say. But as we know, this is just another ruse. This is just another scam to get us to install surveillance. Not only install it, but they want it mandated. And Ashton Kutcher is one of the founders of this organization, which is known as Thorn. Now, it looks like it's an NGO. It appears that way at face, but if you look further into it, it's associated with for-profit corporations that partner with several large tech companies and also have been trying to get their technology into your personal devices. Now, what really concerns me is this is not a voluntary thing. They want to put mass surveillance on all our devices and make it mandated. There's also lobbying for laws that will have imprisonment if these things aren't implemented. So it's a very serious thing. Now, why don't we see what the motivations might be? Let's take a look at one of the founders' videos and possibly get some insight into that.
Okay, so here's the deal. Most people, they want to get a return on their money really quickly. And when it comes to the investing world, usually that's not the best approach. Taking your time is usually a better bet.
So as we can see, Ashton is taking his time and he's really looking for that return. So it appears from what we can see, doing a little bit of research, we can find a lot of information on some of the timeline of the development of Thorn itself. For example, it started out as a DNA foundation, as you can see right here, founded in 2009. And we can take a look at some of these other videos just to get an idea of, the people behind it and kind of what they represent and the interests that may be represented here. Because as we know, a lot of people have interest, especially those in the intelligence community, the law enforcement community. They have a real interest in increasing monitoring of individuals, even if they're completely innocent. And like I said, this is a rollout. They want it to be on all devices. They want it to be on all platforms. So to have it on all platforms, that means that all content will be scanned and observed to attempt to match it with a hash, cryptographic hash, in order to so-called detect some kind of abuse. But we know this is much bigger than that, and as we know, that can actually be turned into something that also implements facial recognition. There was also a report on that recently, and also another example of how this has already gone wrong is this instance with Google, who flagged a parent's account for simply taking photos for the doctor. So a father was trying to help their kid, and the doctor wanted photos of an infection or another type of diagnosis. So that father took photos, and what happened? He became reported to the police. Not only that, they shut down his account and they refused to reinstate the man's account at the time of this article. So this can bite back, and it's also going to threaten journalism. So we know that journalists depend on confidentiality. They know that in order for sources to trust them, they have to have that secure device. They have to have something that is not being monitored, or it's going to threaten the free press altogether. So this isn't just individual conversations we're talking about. This is a threat to our right to free flow of information. This is a threat to everything. The foundation of all our rights, information, privacy, all these things are going to be threatened by this organization. It's a very serious threat. Let's take a listen to what Whitney Webb had to say about this.
Okay, so the most recent article is about an NGO called Thorn that you might have heard of because of its celebrity founder, Ashton Kutcher. And basically what they say they do is, they're all about helping police stop child trafficking. But really so Thorn is partnered with all these Silicon Valley companies, right, including Amazon. And so Amazon came out a few months ago in June and said they're not going to sell facial recognition software to police anymore, but they're still supplying that software to police through Thorn, right? Which is, they're partnered with them. They built Thorn's Spotlight software, which uses recognition, and a company backed by the CIA's Incutel, that's who made Thorn's Stop Child Trafficking.
So that might be a clue as to where some of this funding is coming from. This is massive amounts of funding. We're talking tens and tens of millions of dollars that are coming into Thorn. And they represent themselves as an NGO, as if their entire purpose is to stop crimes against kids. And I 100% agree that we need to go after the people that are committing these crimes. And at the same time, I understand that this is a threat to everyone. For everyone to go under monitoring, it's a threat to anyone who depends on secure communication. It threatens the integrity of encryption in that it bypasses that encryption and can be modified to even implement things like facial recognition, as recent reports suggest.
Program that they're giving to police for free, right? So police everywhere are using this stuff, but there's no oversight over whether police use it just to save kids or if they use it for anything else they're doing, right? So Amazon Recognition has gotten in a lot of trouble in past years, for example, because they...
Another thing to keep in mind is information came out that Ring doorbell actually had staff. I don't know if this exists anymore, but they did have staff that were specifically on for biometric recognition and facial recognition. So if you have a Ring doorbell or if your neighbors have a Ring doorbell, there is always a chance that that video can be analyzed using facial recognition. It could be through, and this is all hypothetical, could be through a third party. So there is, and I did reporting on this, how Ring doorbell also leaves that video up to contractors in Europe, including Ukraine, and it said in this article that they can do as they see fit with that video. So if you have a Ring doorbell, or you know someone who has a Ring doorbell, or if your house is under a Ring doorbell from your neighbor across the street, keep in mind that that video is not private. That video is being shared with contractors in Ukraine and could be repurposed for other purposes. Just as mentioned, things like biometrics, things like that, we are talking about a worldwide network of complete monitoring potential.
That software falsely identified 28 members of Congress with mugshots of criminals, mainly politicians that were, of color.
So this was another report I actually did where the facial recognition actually wrongly detected the members of parliament as criminals in mugshots. As you can see, it's heavily flawed, and what this means is, with this level of flaws, it means that everyone turns into a criminal lineup. So we all become part of a criminal lineup 24 hours a day. That's the danger here. Not only that danger, but the fact that people can't trust their conversations anymore.
So, this is the same software that's being used allegedly to help law enforcement track down and save kids, they say. But there's a lot of really creepy ties. If you look at the board of Thorn, you have people from Covington and Burling law firm. Their main Silicon Valley lawyer is on there. Covington and Burling is a DC law firm that was involved in the overthrow of Honduras's government when Hillary Clinton was head of the State Department in 2009. It's also where Eric Holder works, and John Bolton used to be a lawyer there.
Oh, that's nice. We know some of those happen to be warmongers. People like John Bolton, who we know has been trying to get at war with Iran for quite some time.
So that's the type of law firm that's so, wants to save kids in the U.S., right? But that's just one person. You also have a guy that's part of the World Health Organization now, co-founded a charity with Colin Powell, which I'm sure is great. It's just a bunch of people that you wouldn't expect there, right? And of course, they're partnered with Google, Amazon, all these big tech companies, and several Incutel-funded companies. One of the people on their board is a guy named Joe Lonsdale, who's one of the co-founders alongside Peter Thiel of Palantir. which is a CIA-funded company. The CIA was its only client from 2005 to 2008.
Do you really think the entire purpose of this is to save kids?
And it's used by all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies. Lonsdale was also recently accused of his ex-girlfriend of depriving her of food and her repeatedly. So he's, on the board of this feel-good NGO. If you go to Thorn's website, it's full of all these like nice pictures of kids playing and happy, and talks about how they save all these kids. But basically, I would say it's sort of like a way for Silicon Valley companies to give these experimental softwares that they can't legally sell or publicly sell to police departments under the guise of, they're gonna save kids, but no one knows how they're really using this stuff. And it's very likely that Amazon and a lot of these other companies that are making this, because they give it away for free, have some sort of backdoor into the data, right? That or the way law enforcement is using it, because that's the trade-off for them, is that they can take data out of this program and use it to train their AI algorithms, right? Because facial recognition.
And that's another point. In what we're seeing today is people are being asked to give up all their personal data in order to help, quote, train AI. That's another one of these ruses that are made to get everyone to accept mass surveillance by saying it is for a good cause to make AI safer and more accurate. By giving up your data, which is the cost, you will get a better quality result. But as we just discussed, when they've named the members of parliament as criminal suspects, that basically should tell you that it could turn everyone into a 24 hours a day monitored suspect. Because it is so flawed, these kinds of technologies, when they are heavily flawed and you accept them as a government, you are accepting totalitarian technology. And being that flawed, it becomes just that. Can you imagine, once it's rolled out on all devices, how often this will happen? How many people will have to live through hell because they decided to accept this kind of stuff? When I saw the movie The Sound of Freedom coming out, this always, I'm a bit suspicious of the media pushing all of this. Obviously I heavily support going after those who are trafficking. It's very important that we take these people down and, even make an example out of them, because it is unacceptable. But this is the wrong way. We shouldn't compromise encryption on all our devices just to help enrich private corporations. Speaking of which, we have a private corporation that was developed with Thorn. So as you can see, it's called Safer, and their website is safer.io. You can check that out and see more information. And we can see the VP of Strategic Impact at Thorn is a guy named John Starr. Let's see a little more about this guy, John Starr. So as we can see, he's in San Francisco, at least as the time of this screenshot. And we can see some of his work history as well. Oh, look at that. He just happened to work at Twitter for 6 years and 4 months. And what did he do before that? Well, it does seem like there is a bit of a common transition for those in law enforcement to then go onto these big platforms. And I find that a little unnerving. I don't think that should be who runs social media platforms. And apparently it was the director of trust and safety on Twitter, not anymore, and now is over at Thorn. I wonder what kind of relationship may still exist between Twitter and Thorn. Take a look at Safer's website, and we can see some of their, quote, work. And as you can see, they have a lot of partnerships with different websites: Vimeo, Flickr, Ancestry.com, interesting, ImageUR, GoDaddy, and also the detection with AI. This is all just a way to roll out mass surveillance. As you can see, it identifies their, quote, cryptographic perceptual hashing. So this can be trained to identify other things as well. So it could be political thought. You may have a database of other things being detected in order to help inform different members of the intelligence community worldwide. We don't really know what the entire goal is of Thorn and their software and their customers. But I would be willing to bet it is not going to be only limited to this CSAM stuff. And the way it is being lobbied is highly aggressive, and people who don't support it are then smeared as not supporting going after these traffickers, which is really harmful. Another person that appears to have some connection using OSINT, we see this individual as well, which also has an agenda, as we can see. Meredith Whitaker, who helps run the Signal Foundation, has posted about the flaws in this technology, how it is not even ready to attempt, and really it should never even be attempted. We know there's going to be vulnerabilities introduced. This is going to only make people less safe online, and of all people, children need the protection of encryption as much as anyone. So we take a look at the history of Thorn and the DNA Foundation, which is what it was originally called, founded by Demi and Ashton Kutcher. Partnered with the McCain Institute. You can also see these notable supporters who, whether they realize it or not, are supporting mass surveillance on every single one of your devices. I believe in transparency, so this kind of information needs to be out there, and hence why I'm making this video, so people understand who is supporting of this dystopian, authoritarian enabling technology. The McCain Institute is also involved in supporting Thorn. Now let's take a look at an investigation. Let's go a little deeper into who benefits over the scanning of your devices for so-called CSAM content, which we know is just a cover for mass surveillance. One of the biggest proponents of this technology rollout is Ylva Johansson, hope I said that right, who sent a letter to U.S. organization co-founded by Ashton Kutcher, Thorn. Now, Johansson has urged to continue this campaign to get it passed into forced device and other types of platform-related scanning. This current regulation would make all of these platforms, from Facebook, Telegram, Signal, Snapchat, all the end-to-end encrypted messengers that have a foundation or company behind them. Now, the EU's top data protection watchdog, I can't pronounce the name, so I'll simply report on how they had warned Johansson about the risks in 2020, and they amount to, quote, crossing the Rubicon in terms of mass surveillance of all EU citizens, innocent citizens who have nothing to do with crime but need to be under constant monitoring in order to better enrich these corporations. And it would, quote, fundamentally change the internet and digital communications as we know it. For some reason, Johansson hasn't even blinked. Now, she mentions, the privacy advocates sound very loud, but someone must speak for the children. I would love to know what kind of benefits she may have. Does she have stock in the company? That's something that needs to be looked into. We are dealing with totalitarian technology. Whether or not it exists in a way that is totalitarian today does not matter. What matters is how is it going to evolve? And we know it will evolve, just like any other software. Software evolves. Even Arda Gherkins, who is the former director of Europe's oldest hotline for reporting online CSAM, has critiqued it. Groups like Thorn use everything they can to put this legislation forward, not just because they feel this is the way forward, but also because they have a commercial interest in doing so. Safer.io is one of those major corporations who has a big interest in making a profit. Another interesting fact about Thorn and Ashton Kutcher and Johansson is they lined up as the key speakers at a summit organized by European Parliament Vice President Eva Kaili, who 3 weeks later was arrested and deposed over an investigation into the Qatar Gate cash for lobbying scandal. kind of sounds a little familiar, and when we're looking at this case, we are seeing that cash for lobbying is very likely part of this deal. Even the European Digital Rights Association said that scanning for suspicious material without violating privacy is, quote, deeply misleading. Here's another interesting paragraph in this investigation. The Commission has been reluctant to detail the relationship between Thorn and the Home Secretary Johansson's cabinet under the EU Freedom of Information. It refused to disclose Cordia's emailed responses to Johansson's 2022 letter over a, quote, policy one-pager. Thorn had shared with her cabinet, citing Thorn's position that, quote, the disclosure of this information contained therein would undermine the organization's commercial interest, end quote. So, to say this is just some kind of charity, that's a bit misleading. It's a commercial interest that has an interest in getting a return on the investments, much like Ashton Kutcher has an interest in getting a return in his investment. Sounds like the EU really went out of their way to help out Thorn, and there needs to be some transparency in how much money they are accepting from any partners of Thorn, because there is something going on. I don't believe this is happening on an instinct or just a simply friendly basis. I believe there are more financial interests in this. Another piece of information we can take from Thorn is FGS Global, which is a major lobbying firm that was hired by Thorn, had paid at least 600,000 euros in 2022 alone. Thorn won't comment on that, which is an interesting way to keep their silence, which really makes you want to know a little more. Who was taking that money? Did Johansson take that money? She also would not respond to this for comment or interview. And we can see some of the money that is moving through on getting this legislation and regulation passed to have scanning on these platforms. And if you have the app, that would also affect you. If you're using a platform app, it would mean that your activities on that app would also be scanned. So it does come down to devices, and in the future, we can expect if this goes through, it will eventually make it right onto your device and scan all of your files. That is the direction I see this going if there's not the proper transparency and pushback. These people need to be exposed for what they are. They are money grubbing, and their interest is financial. Their interest may be intelligence gathering, but it is not solely that of protecting kids. Another piece of information we have is traces of Thorn's activities in the EU's lobby transparency register. Includes 219,000 euros contributed in 2021 to the We Protect Global Alliance, which is another organization that has an interest in these types of AI scanning technologies, which had a video conference with Ashton Kutcher in 2020. Now, what's we know about We Protect? It's actually the offspring of two government initiatives, co-founded by the Commission and the United States, the other by Britain. They merged in 2016, and then they also built legislation for CSAM scanning, which we really shouldn't even call it that. I'm not comfortable calling it that because I don't believe that's where it ends. But what we need to understand is the membership of We Protect includes powerful security agencies, a host of governments, big tech managers, NGOs, and, interestingly enough, here's Johansson again, one of her most senior cabinet officials named Antonio Labrador Jimenez, who actually heads the Commission's team tasked with fighting CSAM. So as we can see, there is a consortium of conflicts of interest here. We have people making policy that are also profiting off the very technology rollout that they are imposing on all of us. you can tell they have a real hunger for that cash flow. So as Jimenez emailed his commission colleagues, quote, "The EU does not accept that children cannot be protected and become casualties of policies that put any other values or rights above their protection, whatever these may be," end quote. That is the words of one of Johansson's own staff members. And we can see that there is a vested interest in rolling out this technology where there is a financial interest and heavy lobbying to the EU. This is a dangerous level of corporate power, and we see a lot of abuse by NGOs acting as fronts, and you can see this in nearly every part of the political spectrum where you can see NGOs acting on part of corporate interests, and they use that NGO status to accept money from taxes, other types of breaks that they get in order to push these corporate interests in a dangerous oligarch fashion. Between 2020 and 2023, Johansson's Directorate General awarded €1 million to the We Protect to organize the 2022 summit in Brussels, which was dedicated to device and platform scanning and activities to enhance law enforcement collaboration. The hunger for your data is endless, and that's the reason I started this channel. I realized that what we saw when I first started this channel was just the beginning, that these things will continue to evolve, that will continue to become more invasive, and we will never see an end to it. It will continue to invade our spaces, to watch over our conversations, to infringe on democratic values and the free press. It is a danger to the world, and it is a danger to democracy. Thank you for watching. Make sure to share this, and I will be back with more on how to protect your security and privacy.
So he's, on the board of this feel-good NGO. If you go to Thorn's website, it's full of all these nice pictures of kids playing and happy, and talks about how they save all these kids. But basically, I would say it's sort of like a front, a way for Silicon Valley companies to give these experimental softwares that they can't legally sell or publicly sell to police departments under the guise of, they're gonna save kids, but no one knows how they're really using this stuff. And it's very likely that Amazon and a lot of these other companies that are making this, because they give it away for free, have some sort of backdoor into the data, right? That or the way law enforcement is using it, because that's the trade-off for them, is that they can take data out of this program and use it to train their AI algorithms, right? Because facial recognition is one of those AI-based technologies, right? It uses artificial intelligence, and the way to have a better facial recognition technology is to have a better AI algorithm. And in order to have a better AI algorithm, you have to have masses and masses and masses of data to train that algorithm on, right? So there's definitely something up here. That's just an overview of some of the connections, but there's a lot more to dig into there.